Before we move on to choosing our second font for the headings in the book, we're just going to take a moment to look at sans serif fonts. Now, these first appeared in Latin, Etruscan and Egyptian inscriptions. The first sans serif typeface, as we would recognise it, appeared in 1816, designed by William Caslon, and the first grotesque in 1825. But the term sans serif itself was coined in 1832 by Vincent Figgins. And a lot of these earlier sans serif for typefaces, they have different names. You'll see Egyptian, Gothic, but we tend to refer to them as grotesque en masse these days. They appear round about the 19th to the early 20th century, and we also refer to them as realist or transitional typefaces. Now, the grotesque forms, such as the Franklin Gothic, have a vertical axis. They still have the oval letter O and the classical letter A and G. Some variation, though not much, between the letter width. We also have neo-grotesque, which tend to appear slightly later, from the 1950s onwards, and these still have the classical A, but they have the simplified form of the G. These are similar to the Helvetica, and they have very straight lettering, straight axis, and little to no differentiation in line widths. We also then have humanist sans serif fonts, and these tended to appear from 1916 onwards. They're a little bit more italic in the design, and they most closely resemble serif fonts without the serifs. They have the oval letter O, some differentiation in line width, some tends to vary between fonts, classical letter A, but still mostly the simplified G. And finally, we have the geometric sans serif fonts, and these are most noticeable by the letter O is very, very circular. The shape for the individual letters are quite squared off. We not only have the simplified form of the G, we have the simplified form of the letter A. Still not much variation in line widths, although we do have some around the curves. So that's just a quick overview of sans serif fonts. Now, when it comes to pairing fonts for your book, you've already made your choice for your body text, and safe ways of choosing a good font to go with that include choosing a superfamily. So you may look at Lucida, which has both serif and sans serif and various other typefaces and font styles. You can look at using fonts that were designed by the same designer. So, for example, Palatino Linotype was designed by Hermann Zapf. A quick search for Hermann Zapf will tell you that he also developed the Optima sans serif font face, and those two work really well together. So if you've chosen a font and you want to look up the designer and then look at the other fonts that they designed, they will usually be a pretty good match. Although you can use fonts from the same period. Now, we have a resource for that, which is the cargocollective.com. I'll include a link in a supplemental material. But that gives you some, it's not exactly comprehensive, but it does give you some of the most popular fonts. And you can see, for example, if you look at 1930, that Perpetua and Gill Sans, both designed in 1930, they're a really good pairing. If you don't want to go to that kind of research, then as a general rule of thumb, if you have an old style or humanist serif font, that will pair well with a humanist sans serif font. If you have a traditional Baroque serif, that will go with a realist. or grotesque sans serif type style. If you have a modern or Didone serif font, that will pair well with a geometric sans serif. It will also pair really well with a slab serif most of the time. So have a good look round. Again, go back to the same resources. We have defont.com, identifont.com, and you can click on text sans serif. You can also click on heading serif and heading sans serif to find fonts, because these aren't fonts that are going to be used for huge blocks of text, so you can get away with a little bit more. I would tend at this point, for the heading font, I would tend to stick with just a basic sans serif, because you might decide to use it for captioning and some other text elements. But if it is going to be consigned just to headings, like if you're writing non-fiction and you've only got chapter headings, then you can afford to be a little bit more flamboyant with your choice and go for the heading serif and the heading sans serif fonts. And also, of course, we've got Font Squirrel. So have a good look round, and in the next lecture I'll show you how we're applying those heading styles to the manuscript.